and see if you see yourself in this story. There's been a terrible storm in the forest, and the sparrows, all of their nests have been destroyed. But the owls were very wise, and they prepared a whole series of sparrow nest kits in case the storm came. And so we get to watch a parrot and an owl who are tasked with building two new birds' nests. So they have two kits, they're both in a bag. The owl is very carefully taking each item out, inspecting it, looking at the inventory, looking at the list, counting the items, puts everything down, reads the directions, looks over at the parrot who has ripped open the bag and is half done building the bird's nest already. And it looks like a disaster. And the parrot's like, "What? You haven't even started yet. I'm halfway done." Like, "What are you doing over there?" And the owl's like, "What are you doing over there?" Like, "Look what, it's a mess." And so the challenge is that we work differently, we communicate differently, and how do we treat each other when that happens? And that story could happen at work, it could happen at home with a spouse.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Rebel Love podcast. Today, my guest is Merrick Rosenberg, a personality expert and award-winning author of Taking Flight, The Chameleon, and Personality Wins, 3 books about stepping into the power of your personality. He's worked with more than half of the Fortune 100 companies as a keynote speaker and as a media guest. He speaks to entertain and enlighten audiences as they learn about the most interesting topic of all, themselves. Who doesn't want to talk about yourself? Through his reimagined approach to understanding personality, your audience will discover how their personality both helps and hinders them on the road to success. Hi, Merrick. How's it going?
Hi, very good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I think this is a really, really amazing topic. And I think, you must have such an interesting life if this is what you talk about all the time. You get to discover things about your own personality and things about people you work with and are around all the time. How did you get
Oh,
into
absolutely.
working with personalities in this field of work?
Well, back in 1991, I had started one of the very first team building companies in the United States. There were probably half a dozen team building firms at the time, and didn't take long to discover that personality conflicts were a lot of the reason why people did not get along well, and teams had drama and negativity and toxic work environments. And so I thought teaching people about their personalities and how to get along better, how to create a great culture, how to be a better leader, well, that's pretty powerful. And I just started working with personality styles then, and just grew from there, created a whole business around it. It's just absolutely a blast.
Awesome. So just on that, I've got a question for you already. um, if if someone doesn't get along because of their personality, is it always solvable, or is there sometimes just that true personality clash?
It's solvable if they don't judge each other and they want to understand each other. But if you get locked into my way is the right way, there's a great George
Right.
Carlin quote. He said, "Everyone driving slower than me is an idiot. Everyone driving faster than me is a maniac." Like, if you think my way is the right way, then yeah, they're going to have personality conflicts because you want them to adjust to you. But if you can accept that people are different and accept that they have different needs and you treat them accordingly, then any two people can get along.
Right. So I don't know if this is the right terminology, but are you kind of talking about ego then? We kind of have to drop that need to be right and the ego, or are we talking about something else?
To a degree, we have to be outward focused instead of inward focused. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a healthy ego. That's confidence. But if you dial ego up too much, then it can become arrogance and become self-centered. So if you focus on being confident and assertive, but also focus on the other people's needs as well, then that's the foundation for getting along with people.
I guess some people just don't want that. They're happy being in their own little world and not sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
um,
And thus is
yeah.
the reason why there's drama and divorce and conflict, and that's why this happens.
Right, right. I feel like I don't want to get too far off topic, but I wonder if that's from like unresolved things from childhood, or like how much of that is a kind of like unresolved trauma or misunderstood experiences from childhood and then personality? Like, where is that line?
Well, certainly, if we are bringing emotional baggage with us, then that drives our behaviors. But our personality isn't necessarily driven by emotional baggage. I mean, there's a style that we have. There's people who are very direct. There's people who are more quiet. There's people who are very outgoing. There's people who are very analytical. That's not necessarily
Hmm.
baggage driven. It's just there's hardwiring there, and we are all given a personality at birth, and sometimes it does change, but there's some hardwiring in terms of who we are, and there's no good or bad personality. We just are who we are.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Sorry, I'm really, I'm just like jumping into all these questions that I personally want to know. But I understand that you've written some books and you have tied or linked some personalities to some birds. First of all, I want to know how did you come up with this, and what are they linked to? What are these birds linked to?
So when I was teaching personality styles, I was using letters. There's some systems out there. The disc model has been out there for many years, since 1928, and I was using the letters DISC, and it's a very valid and reliable system. Nobody owns disc, so I'm not picking on the disc people. There are no disc people. It's just a lot of people use that model. And I would go back into companies 2, 3 months later, and people were like, "Wait, which is the D? Wait, what's the I again?" And they just weren't even remembering it. If you can't remember it, then how are you possibly using it? And I
Hmm.
wanted to write some books about personality styles, and I found, you know what? If we make them more visual and easy to remember, people will use them. So that led me to creating the birds, and in literally a moment of an epiphany of what if we used birds. And the eagle represented the D style, and eagles are very confident, they're very assertive and direct and take charge. Then you've got parrots. I mean, I'll ask you, if you think of a parrot, what do you think of when you think of a parrot?
Well, I guess like chatty, like you know how they copy what you're
Right.
saying, they
Talkative.
parrot what you're saying back.
Yeah. Do you think they're
Hmm.
solitary or more social,
Um,
more group oriented?
More social, yeah. They seem more
Right.
social.
Notice how
Is
you
that
get
true?
it.
I don't know.
Do you think
I don't know.
they're
I've never really been
optimistic?
around a parrot before.
Right. But notice how you just get it. We attribute these
Yeah, kind of.
traits. I mean, it's simple,
Hmm.
right? Yeah, let's do
Kind of.
another one.
Yeah, they
When
kind
you
of
think,
seem more happy on the bright side.
right, they're optimistic. Exactly. So if you thought of somebody who was the dove, what comes to mind for the dove?
Um, Graceful. I was about to say something else. Calmer.
Right,
I
exactly.
guess
Very
is that right?
calm, very peaceful, very caring and compassionate. They're good listeners. I mean, they're the symbols of hope and love and peace all throughout the world.
Mm-hmm.
So picture someone
Mm-hmm.
who's an owl. What comes to mind for an owl?
Like regal, thought out, solitary. Actually, I don't know if that's true,
More
but they kind of
solitary, more
seem.
thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly
Mm-hmm.
right. So notice, I don't have to really teach you the four birds, and you don't have to memorize them because you already get it. Eagles are direct and assertive. Owls are more logical and analytical. Parrots are more social and outgoing. Doves are more quiet and harmonious. But you immediately get it. That allows us to spend our time talking about how do you use them instead of trying to memorize a model that you'll eventually forget.
Mm. Yes, that's definitely good for people like me who forget lots of things. So, and okay, so how do you know which bird you are? Is it taking like you linked it to the disc test results, or is this something like have you come up with a test of your own that
Yeah, well,
that is
keeping in
linked to
mind
it?
too, there is no disc profile that is the disc profile. There's many disc profiles because nobody owns it. So a lot of people have created disc assessments. We've created one.
Hmm.
Over 10 million people have taken our profile. It's valid, it's reliable, and people can take an assessment and they can see what their style is. But the fun part is you don't necessarily have to take an assessment. You can think about people that you know and you can figure it out pretty quickly. Are they talkative and outgoing? Are they quiet and reserved? Are they direct or are they more thoughtful and analytical? And as you start thinking about the people in your life, you can figure out their style. You can figure out your own style pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you said before, do our personalities change much? So if I took the disc when I was younger and I took the disc now, would there be much of a difference there?
There can be, absolutely. I think of it as a snapshot in time. for some people, they are very different when they're younger versus when they grow up. There are some people
Mm.
whose styles are exactly the same. That literally, if they were to take an assessment and take this profile 30 years ago and then take it today, it would be the exact same graph. And so some people, yes, they absolutely change over time. Other people, it's pretty much this is you. It's always been you. It probably always will be.
Yeah, sure. Um, okay, so what about if like you as a person, are you able to quickly identify someone's personality just by talking to them?
Absolutely. You can walk into a restaurant and within seconds you'd be like, my kids could do that even when they were little, like 6 years old. A server would take our drink order and they'd be like, okay, she's a parrot. All right, he is an owl in seconds. You can absolutely do that. I mean, it's like you can tell just from someone's smile, someone's energy, someone's their laughs, from their how they're are they talking confidently. If you talk to an eagle and they say, all right, here's what we're going to do. Whereas if you had a
Right.
dove, they might say, what do you think of this? Do you think that's an idea? Maybe we could try this. Or if you're talking to a
Mm,
parrot, they might say, I got it. This is the
right.
idea. But if an owl might say, all right, a few things. Let me share with you a few ideas of what I'm thinking here. So, no matter
Hmm.
what they're doing, you can very quickly meet somebody and figure out their style and size them up and see what they are.
And are you generally right? Like, how do you? First of all, how do you know if you're right? And second of all, what if they're having an off day? What if something happened, or they just got thrown, or
Sure, there's absolutely anybody can display any one of the behaviors. So there could be times where my style is more of a parrot, but there are times when
Hmm.
I'm in owl mode. If I'm planning to travel and speak at a conference, I've got to make sure all my travel logistics are set. What time's my flight? Where am I going? What am I talking about? Do we ship the right materials? There's a tremendous amount of owl energy that I have to put out. Now it exhausts me because I am not an owl, but I could be in owl mode. But the reality is, spend a little while with somebody, and you're just going to see who they are. You can't sustain being somebody else for an extended period of time. So in the moment, sure, they might display some behaviors just given what you're doing, but overall, you're going to be able to meet somebody pretty quickly and figure their style out.
Okay. So let's talk about how these styles play out in our life. How do they, in what ways can they positively affect our like work life or our relationships, romantic, but also our relationships with our kids or our family?
Sure.
And yeah, let's talk about that first.
So, so think about how our personality, how our style impacts other people. So let's just say your style is a parrot, which is going to be my guess. So let's say you have a parrot style. Just in a few moments of talking with you, I'm going to go with parrot. What do you think about that?
I'm okay with that. Is that I don't associate that with being good or bad. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, none of them are good or bad. They just are. So let's just say you have the parrot style, okay?
Okay.
And you're giving directions to someone who is an owl. And as a parrot, parrots are more likely to say, oh, here's all you do. Just take you a couple minutes. Here's what it is. And the owl's like, whoa, whoa, where do I start? What's the process? What do you want me to
Hmm.
do? How do you want it to go? And as the parrot, it's just like, yeah, it's easy. You'll figure it out. It's no problem at all. And the owl is very frustrated because what happens in our relationships, whether it's within our romantic relationships or in our relationships with our children, is we impose our personality on them. So
Mm.
we treat them the way we would want to be treated because we think, well, if that's what I would want, that's what they
Yes.
would want. And so we treat them how
Hmm.
we want to be treated. But the reality is, in most romantic relationships, in most relationships when we get married or significant other, they are not the same style. In fact, overwhelmingly, they're the exact opposite of us. And the
Hmm.
opposites are eagles and doves tend to get married. Parrots and
Hmm.
owls tend to get married. Can people get married who have the same style? Sure. But it's far less prevalent. We don't see it as much. So, what does it mean? You're very likely to marry someone who's different from you. They're going to have different needs. And do you impose your needs on them or do you honor who they are? If you impose your needs on them, Good luck with that, because that's where conflict and drama comes from. But if you take a look
Right.
at what are their needs and satisfy their needs, and you communicate to them how they want to be communicated to, drama tends to melt away and conflict is lighter. I'm not going to say doesn't exist, but it doesn't have
Mm-hmm.
that heaviness to it. It's just more of a conversation than than something that kind of weighs on you after the fact.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like most things kind of I guess self development wise, in that we need to know ourselves first. And then we can go, okay, well, this is how this person operates. And now I can not suppress parts of myself, but be aware of that and interact in a certain way with that to get the result that we want, I guess. That sounds kind of,
Right. Well, think
kind of,
about this.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right. The most self-aware people are the happiest people. They build the strongest relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
so, first step, you've got to know your style. If you don't know your style, you are destined to impose it on others. But then, do you have the ability to read other people to figure out what their needs are? Their needs are. And I don't think of it as really suppressing my needs. I think of it as I'm satisfying their needs. And so, you asked like about children. I'll give you an example. I have two boys. One of them is an owl. One of them is a parrot. So I remember teaching them how to drive, and I took my parrot child out, and he's driving. He immediately is like, let's go. He's like, and he's like, let's, and he just wants to just pull out of the driveway and get onto a highway. He does not care. He is ready to go. My owl child is like, well, why don't you drive us to a parking lot where it's empty, and then I'll practice before we ever touch a road. Now, how different is that? My parrot child had to learn how to parallel park. You go into a city and you got to back it into a space and park along the side of the
Mm-hmm.
road. He did it 2 times and he was like, got it. I'm good. And I'm like, you did it twice. You think you might want to practice? My owl child did it no less than 100 times and was like, I need it. I need to keep practicing. I'm like, you have it. And he's like, well, what I need to get it better. And so,
Mm-hmm.
so,
I need to get
but
the
if I have,
confidence.
yeah, and if I have one parenting style and impose that on both children, then I'm going to end up
Mm-hmm.
satisfying one of their needs and not the other. So if I, as a parent,
Mm-hmm.
look at my parrot child and go, "You got it, got it. All right, good, we're done. Let's go get some ice cream." Then that works great for the parrot. But if I say to my owl child who does it twice, "All right, you're done. Let's go," and he's like, "I'm not done," and I'm starting to argue with him and say, "Well, you are done. You just did it twice in a row. All right, do it one more time." Now, what I'm really saying is, okay, how you act in the world isn't okay. If you acted like me, I would value you. But the way you're acting right now is wrong, because I'd be imposing
Right.
my parrot on his owl style. What I had to do is say,
Mm-hmm.
all right, I'm a parrot. I'm going to dial up some patience here because this is going to take a while. And I had to just let him do it over and over and over until he felt comfortable. And then we were done.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's
Nice.
it's recognizing that maybe I have two kids, but I can't have one parenting style. Each one of them needs something different. And so if
Mm-hmm.
you anybody who has siblings, if you don't have kids yet, this is true. What worked with you may not have worked with your brother or sister. That if your
Mm.
parents treated both of you the same, it wouldn't have worked so well. And so
Yeah.
whether we're talking about our kids or a spouse, we have to think about what do they need so I'm satisfying their needs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because my sisters and I'm a brunette. One of my sisters is a blonde, and one of my sisters is a redhead. Our personalities are all as different as our hair color. So,
That's how it
and it's
works.
really, yeah. And my mum said that actually. She was like, "Yeah, you're different people, so I treat you differently." She's very wise. She
Yes, but
is.
imagine if she treated all of you the same. How would
That
that
wouldn't have
work?
worked out very well. Yeah.
Right, like my father is an eagle. My sister is a dove. Now, with me, he could be very direct. And I'd say, okay, it didn't bother me. I'm a parrot, secondary eagle style, because you're not just one of them. He was very direct with
Right.
me, worked fine. One day, I remember he was very direct with my sister. She burst into tears. Now, it's not that she's a woman. It's not a gender issue. It's a style issue. She's a dove, and he yelled at her. He didn't even yell. He just spoke directly. Couldn't handle it. And he's like, "What? This works with
Right.
Merrick all the time. Why isn't this working with her?" Yeah, because we have very
Right.
different needs. I'm more of a parrot eagle. She's more of a dove. You can't speak to a dove directly and assertively. You have to soften your words a little bit, or else you offend them, hurt their
Mm.
feelings. And now you're going to be talking about that instead of talking about the
Mhm.
issue.
Mhm. Okay, great. I feel like there's a lot to learn here. Like, okay, so let if we're in this situation and we want to go, okay, let's use these birds as to help me really kind of understand what's going on with my colleagues and my family and my friends. How do you have a definitions of this in a book that we can read?
Yeah, in what I did is I wrote 3 books, but one that I think is very simple. It's a great starter book. Is The Chameleon. It's called The Chameleon: Life Changing Wisdom for everyone for you and everyone you know. Right, and so it's kind of like all about like who are you and how do I communicate to everyone around me. So it's a series of 22 fables, and the first fable teaches you the 4 birds, but the next 21 fables are okay. Let's give you some scenes with real like eagles and parrots and doves and owls in the wild, and the all-knowing chameleon who is kind of pops in, is very adaptable, understands all the styles, and then wanders off. And so, and I'll give you an example of one of the fables. So uh, there's been a terrible storm in the forest, and see if you see yourself in this story. There's been a terrible storm in the forest, and the sparrows, all of their nests have been destroyed. But the owls were very wise, and they prepared a whole series of sparrow nest kits in case the storm came. They could rebuild all the nests for the sparrows, and we would save the day. So so they've partnered up. And so we get to watch a parrot and an owl who are tasked with building 2 new birds' nests. So they have 2 kits, they're both in a bag. The owl is very carefully taking each item out, inspecting it, looking at the inventory, looking at the list, counting the items, puts everything down, reads the directions, looks over at the parrot who has ripped open the bag and is half done building the bird's nest already. And it looks like a disaster. And the parrot's like, "What? You haven't even started yet. I'm halfway done." Like, "What are you doing over there?" And the owl's like, "What are you doing over there?" Like, "Look what it's a mess." And so the challenge is that we work differently, we communicate differently, and how do we treat each other when that happens? And that story could happen at work, it could happen at home with a spouse. I mean, imagine just building a piece of furniture or something, putting something together with your spouse, and you have 2 very different styles. You either have conflict or you understand each other and you find a happy medium.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you when you gave that example of building something together, I was like conflict. So I'd just be like, okay, I'll just leave you to it. See you in an hour.
Yeah, as the owl, looks like you got it. I'll be back in a
Yeah.
little while.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't need any help here. You're good. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, this is super helpful because yeah, I just can think of so many ways that we could subtly or even overtly make uh, changes that could really impact our day to day really, really quickly just by having this understanding. Mm.
Yeah, and
I,
and
I'm,
it
I'm even
really is
thinking back to the
easy.
show. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it really is easy. I mean, you think about what's my style, what's their style, and what do they need from me. That's all you need to figure out for yourself. Can you see it play
Hmm.
out in your life as we're talking about the styles? Can you see this play out with you
Oh,
and
yeah.
people in your world?
Yeah. And I could also see like when I was younger, I remember even having like tolerance, like wait waiting and letting people figure things out. I used to be a behavioral therapist, so I think that helped a lot of just waiting and letting things play out. But I see a lot of people getting, and a lot of my friends will tell me they'll get like frustrated with their parents. And I always think I love it now. Like when I was younger, I probably got frustrated with my mother, no doubt. But now I'm like, I love it, and I see differently because I take a step back, and I'm like, I love all these pieces of your personality. It's kind of like I want to soak it all in. But I feel like that's me being more aware. These parts of her are
Yes.
always there, and she's a very patient. Yeah, she's a little bit dove, but a little bit. eagle as well, very direct as well,
Yeah.
but also mostly dove.
Well, here's the thing. I'll bet if she is mostly dove, the dove eagle combo is pretty rare. Is she very
She's pretty
direct
rare.
with family members? But if there's people she doesn't know in a setting she's perhaps not comfortable in, is she more dove-like, or does that eagle still come out? Because a lot of time
It
doves are very
depends.
assertive with their family, but aren't necessarily as assertive with everybody else.
It depends. It depends. It really depends on the situation. I see what you're saying, though. I think, yeah, probably more with family and friends, but also I've seen her do it with other people. But she's not rude, but very direct.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
which is
doves are
kind of an
very
art, really.
protective. Yeah, doves are very protective of their family members. In fact, they'll often fight more for their family or close friends than they will even fight for themselves. Like it's like the dove style is just very concerned that the people around them are safe and comfortable and happy. So, but you can see the challenges if you're a dove and you're dating someone who's an eagle, and they're
Hmm.
very direct and very assertive, and the dove is like, why do they have to say it like that? Or
Yeah, that's me.
right.
I'm very
Yeah,
direct and
I've
assertive
seen this.
people.
I give you I'll give you an example. Like I've heard doves say like the eagle will say, "Well, where do you want to go for dinner?" And the dove's like, "I don't care, wherever you want to go." And the eagle's like, "No, no, seriously, wherever you want to go, you pick it. You can decide where we go." "No, no, no, it's fine." And then the eagle says, "All right, how about some Italian food?" And then the dove's like, "Fine, fine, Italian's fine." And then the whole way there, the dove is like, they totally know I just had Italian for lunch and they picked it anyway. Like, how rude is that?
Oh,
And the eagle would be like, but I asked you, you should know. You should know what I want. And so the challenge sometimes is that the doves may not necessarily directly state what they're looking for, unless they have some eagle, but they may not directly state their needs. But then eagles, the dove expects the eagle in a sense to be psychic and know what their needs are, because as the dove,
mm,
I would know what you want. I don't even have to ask you. I know you so well. I know what you want. And the fact that you have to ask me shows me you don't know me. And that is offensive. So a lot of times we can
right.
see the underlying cause of conflict really is just a style issue.
Interesting. Yeah, she's definitely a dove and an eagle together then. She'd be like, no, we're going here.
Right? It is fun to watch how the styles combine.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of fascinating now that you're kind of like making it so easy to consume and talk about, because like you said, when you go to a restaurant, you can be like, oh, well, let's see what kind of personality this is. But I guess it's easy to be wrong though too, right? So you
Well,
might
you
have
may
to
be
be careful with that.
picking up on what's happening in that moment, and that may not be
Hmm.
who they are the majority of time. It depends what's happening in the moment, but generally, we're pretty good at figuring out people's styles. Once you really get it, you can see it very very quickly. And once you do, you try to flex to them, and you see how they react. If you're talking to an owl, provide more detail and see how they respond to it. If you're talking to an
Hmm.
eagle,
Hmm.
more direct and see how they respond.
Okay, so you just gave us some examples before about in that exact scenario of like the dove going, no, you should know. I don't know. To me, that's kind of like a little bit of how someone's personality might work against them. What are some other examples of a way our personality might work against us, and what can we do about it if it's something that we want to change?
Yeah, our personality is what drives our success and what can build healthy relationships. But if you dial your personality up too much and push it into the red zone, it absolutely works against you. So take the eagle. Eagles are confident, they're assertive. But if you dial it up, it's like you push it too far in that red zone, they become aggressive, they become arrogant. Take the dove, they can become passive and insecure. You take
Mm,
parrot, they're optimistic. Yeah, dial up optimism, and now they become so optimistic, they're just unrealistic. So
wow.
trusting. Oh, they said they would do it. I'm sure it'll be fine. The owl, they do things accurately and they have a process and a plan. But if you dial that up too much, you push that into the red zone, analysis paralysis. They can't make a decision. Everything has to be so perfect, they can't declare anything done. And so if you take your style, you take your personality and you dial it up too far, you push it in that red zone, it's now getting in the way. It's now actually pushing people's buttons, frustrating the people around you, whereas your personality could have built a strong relationship. Now it's potentially damaging.
Mm. So if we find ourselves in that position, uh, what's the answer? Is it just being more aware of it?
Yeah,
It
it's
sounds
not a
like.
matter of changing who you are. It's a matter of being the best version of yourself. So if
Mm-hmm.
the reality is that most of the time when your personality is dialed up too much, there's probably a stressor. In other words, stress creates that overuse. So if you
Mm-hmm.
find that maybe you're just as a parrot, just being overly optimistic, it's not a matter of saying you have to change who you are. It's a matter of saying, you know what, I'm going to dial it back down a little bit so that I could be the best version of myself. So my optimism is serving me, but not making me so unrealistic that I'm now naive or not going to get my needs met. So, an
Mm-hmm.
owl might say, look, you're telling me to dial down perfection? Yes. Perfection may be impossible. Seek excellence. Don't seek perfection, seek excellence. Perfection may never happen. But if you can declare this as, this is beautiful, this is excellent, this is fantastic, that's great. Is it perfect? Maybe not, but perfection may never happen. So it's not a matter of saying change your personality. It's a matter of saying bring it to a healthy level so that it serves you without driving the people around you absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Okay, that's great advice. Um, yeah, and I guess the parts that we do like, we can again brings back to awareness, turn the things that we do like up, and the what's the word you used? Working with other personalities more so that you can get the best outcome. Mm.
Yeah, and anybody can flex to any style for a few minutes. If an eagle's talking to a dove, dial it down a little bit, soften your words. If you're dove talking to an
Mm-hmm.
eagle, be more direct. You'll get your needs met that way. If you won't offend
Mm-hmm.
them, if you're a parrot, dial down the enthusiasm, dial up the detail. If you're an owl,
Right.
dial and you're talking to a parrot, dial up the enthusiasm, dial down the detail. Anybody could do that for a few minutes. It's not a matter of changing who you are or being inauthentic. It's saying, you know what? I'm genuinely trying to satisfy their needs. And in a healthy relationship, maybe you meet somewhere in the middle. Everybody gets their needs met.
I like that. So we could practice mirroring and just see what happens for us.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, that's what it is. It's that mirroring their behavior back to them. And that's the thing. If you ever want to just figure out what do they need in this moment, look how they're treating you in this moment. If they're giving you a
Mm-hmm.
ton of information, give them a ton of information. If they're bursting with energy and they have a great idea, don't say, well, I have a few concerns about it. Say, all right, this sounds exciting. I mean, obviously, we're going to have to work it through, but as an initial idea, sounds great. It's like you don't have to tear
Mm.
it down in the first 5 seconds. So it's mirror back the energy to them to create that connection.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's really great language as well. Thank you for that. Awesome. Okay, so moving on to the juicy details of dating. How can we read people's personalities when dating? And is it possible to read somebody's personality over text before we even meet them? Do they give kind
Sure,
of
absolutely.
clues in those texts?
Yeah. So let's start. We'll work our way back. So let's, because texting's a little easier, then we'll work up to dating. So if you got a text message from an eagle, it's probably a few words right to the point. If you got a text message from an owl, it's probably very long, filled with information. If you got a text message with a parrot from a parrot, here's the keystroke, dead giveaway, exclamation points. Like, hey, exclamation point. Hope you're having an awesome day, exclamation point. It's bursting with energy. It's jumping out of your phone at you, filled with emojis. Doves, hi, how are you? I hope you're well. Hope everything's okay with you. Hope this finds you well. Like if there's a checking in, hope everything's okay. Have a nice weekend. But you can feel it just from a text message. Um, think of a face-to-face interaction. I mean, I'll kind of model it for you and see if you can even figure out my style. You ready? So let's say
Okay.
I walk up to you where this, we're in like a speed dating uh, room, and people are walking around, and you
Scenario.
just have to walk up and introduce yourself. And I walk up to you and I say, "Hi there, Merrick Rosenberg." All right, what style do you feel that is?
Probably an eagle.
Absolutely. Now, if I walked up to you and I said, "Hi, how are you? It's so nice to meet you."
Pro- Probably a dove.
Notice how you're doing it. Hey, so nice to meet you. Awesome. My name's Merrick. What do you think?
Parrot, man, yeah, you're right.
Right?
Makes it much more clear. I love this example.
If I walked up to you and said,
Oh, do the
"Hi,
owl, do
nice to
the
meet
owl.
you." Right? Ready? "Hi, nice to meet you, Merrick Rosenberg."
Oh, that's kind of slightly similar to the eagle, but
Well, eagle's a little
I love
different
the
though.
owl.
Instead, eagle's like, "Hi there, nice to meet you." There's a
Right.
kind of a confidence with the eagle. Owl's more like, "Hello, nice to meet you." It's very businesslike. It's very formal. Even in personal settings, it's more matter of fact. And notice how fast you can do that. And that's what I'm talking about. You can meet somebody instantly. It's like, got it. And then in a dating situation, you can decide, what are you looking for? What would make you happy? What complements your style? Are you looking for somebody who's exactly like you? You have two parrots together, they are fighting for airtime. They're both talking. They don't even hear each other. You have two doves together. It could be a very wonderful relationship. It might take a very long time for them to buy a house or to make major life decisions because they have to talk it out. They want to make
Mm.
sure they're comfortable. Two owls, their house is probably very organized. It also may take a lot of time for them to buy a house or make major decisions because they're going to analyze it and
Mhm.
analyze it. Two eagles can have a great relationship, but it's probably louder. It's probably very assertive and very direct. And if that's what you're looking for, have at it. But it's very powerful to not only know your style, but to know what makes you happy. What are the kinds of styles, the types of people that have worked for you in the past, and what hasn't worked for you in the past? What are you looking for? So you could very quickly look for somebody that fits what you're looking for from a personality perspective. And that honestly, that screens a lot of people out very fast. But actually, I'd rather screen them out now than 2 years from now because we were just clashing this whole time. So you can figure it out quickly, also figure out what you're looking for.
Yeah, I like that. What was going through my head when you were saying that was at the start of the interview, you talked about secondary personality. Let's talk a little bit about that because I feel like, yeah, like we're not just one type of bird. We can have
Yes.
a little bit of more than one. So how do we know that? How do we figure
Yeah.
that bit out?
Well, for me, I'm a parrot, secondary eagle. So, what do you think of risk taking? What do you think a parrot eagle's level of risk taking would be?
Higher than the other two,
Absolutely.
much
Do you
higher
think,
than the other
right? Do
two.
you think they're more direct or indirect?
More direct,
Right? What's their energy level?
higher energy level, more enthusiastic.
Right? Notice how you've known the birds for a few minutes and you already can tell me about an eagle parrot. I think of somebody like Steve Irwin is a good example of that. Right?
Hmm.
Like he's someone who is just like such a big personality. We're this is gonna be awesome. But
Yeah.
here's what I'm gonna do. Like, he looks in the river and you gotta remember years ago, like pre Steve Irwin, people who were doing like uh television shows, wildlife shows, they were like 1,000 feet away with a long lens zoom camera, and they're like, look at the mother lion. And here comes Steve Irwin. He's like, look at him. He could rip me in half. I'm going in. you know, what? Like, what are you doing? And that's that
I know.
parrot eagle. It's they're
Hmm.
energetic and confident. And notice we could do that with all the
Mm.
styles. The parrot dove is very caring. They're people oriented. They want people to get along. They're fun, but they're
Mhm.
very compassionate too. The owl and dove
Mhm.
combo is very logical, very analytical, but also very personable because they've got the task oriented owl and the people oriented dove. They're probably very reserved, not high on the risk taking scale. Somebody who's an eagle owl, I want it now and I want it right. They have very
Right.
high
Yeah, yeah,
expectations
yeah.
of themselves
Yeah.
and everybody else. So
Mhm.
notice how it's like once you learn what the eagle, parrot, dove, and owl are, if I just started combining them, they just start making sense. It's like you could do it so quickly. And that's the beauty of the birds is that they make it easy.
They do make it easy, but what about actually, I'm glad you brought up Steve Irwin because that's a great example. I remember Steve Irwin told a story once where he was asked by the Queen to have dinner, And the
Okay.
interviewer said, "Oh my gosh, did you go?" And he goes, "No, I don't want to go to dinner with the queen. I don't have any clothes to dress up in. Like, that's just not my bag. Like, I'd rather go home and have dinner with my wife and my family and, live my life." And I was just like, "Go you. I love that." I just think that's so amazing. But what
Yeah.
I got from that was just his lack of wanting. He didn't really care about the fame. Like, he only cared about it because it brought light onto conservation, which is what he was really passionate about. Like,
Yes.
it wasn't about his own fame. It was about, I love that I'm bringing light to conservation and I want
Yes.
that to be the star. So
Yeah.
that ambition, is there like one personality type? I would guess it would be the eagle that would have that kind of
Yes. That's
ambition and
notice.
fame and
You're exactly right. Well, eagles though the parrots love the spotlight. But the thing about the eagle is they live independent of the opinions of others. They just do their own
right,
thing. Like, if they don't like this, I don't care if they don't like it. Do I
right.
need to go to dinner? I don't need to go to dinner. I
Mm,
mean, it's like for the eagle, if it's going to help me get better results. In his case, look, he just saved so much land. I mean, it's amazing how many things he did behind the scenes that people didn't
mm,
know that he did, because he
right.
was like, if it was parrot only, he would probably have loved that spotlight. But the eagle part of him, I think, said, you know, this is about saving animals, and the way you save animals is you save the land that they live on. And we don't need to, that doesn't need to be in the news. What needs to be in the news is, let's highlight the needs of these animals. Let's create some awareness, and then that'll help us. But it's
Hmm.
fascinating to see, like, he's just a great example of, he was powered by enthusiasm and passion, and it was
Yeah.
channeling towards getting results, which you could see that parrot and eagle combining together. And we could do that with
Hmm.
anybody. We could look at, how do we deconstruct their personality in terms of the bird styles, and then it explains why they do what they do.
Hmm. I really want to know what personality type Steph Curry would be, because I
Well,
feel,
what do you think?
I feel, I don't know. I've only seen a few interviews, but I just really, from what I've seen, I'm like, oh, I really like this man. I
So
just think
take
he's.
it apart. What do you like about it? Is it that he's very thoughtful or very energetic?
Do you know what it is? I don't know. Like I said, I don't know him. I don't know too much about him, to be honest. I've seen a few interviews,
Yeah,
and a few where he's had his daughter with him, and I just think that's just so. I love that. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just think this
yeah,
is such an amazing example of a really powerful man who's just incredibly masculine, but also really soft and it's incredibly attractive. I'm just like, wow, this guy, I love this guy, and
yeah.
that
Well,
he's
well,
able
see
to
that.
do
So,
that.
right, it tells you about what you would be attracted to, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think he actually is probably an owl dove. Like, he knows what he's very focused, but he also has
Hmm.
a softer side, and he's very personable. And so,
Hmm.
when you have that style and it combines together, you get somebody who's just, it's like they're a family person. They've got that dove style in them. And I
Mhm.
remember there was a politician near where I live, and I was watching him one day, and he had like I don't remember, I don't know how old his daughter was. I'm going to guess around 3. She was young, and he was making a speech, and he just made a speech holding her. She was fussy, and he walked over and he's like, "Oh, I'll get her," and he just held on to her and he just kept going. And he's just like,
Oh, I
and
love
he's kind
that.
of like looking at you, all right, and he continued going, and he looked at her, and he continued going, and it was so endearing. I think he
Mm.
appealed to so
Yeah,
many people, whereas an
for
eagle would have been
sure.
like, "Take that child and move them. I'm working."
Yeah.
And here his dove
Yeah.
part in was like, "Come here, I'll hold her. It's okay."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
And
but it tells
yeah,
you what
that's
you're
what people
drawn
love.
to, right? But you look at,
Mhm.
from, if you talk about dating, you could look at that and say, all right, which one of those appealed to you? Did you like the person
Mhm.
who said, "Hey, take her," and they were so focused, and you say, "I respect that. They saw a problem, they fixed it, they moved on." Or you respect the person who says, "You know what? Bring her over here. I'll hold her." Which one
Yeah,
appeals to
I love.
you tells you about
Yeah.
what you like, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Bring her over. I'm the one who'd be like, "Bring her
Right.
over."
I
Well,
mean,
it's this
conflicted. My
weird
parrot
thing.
wants her, but the eagle part is like, no. I'd have two voices in my head.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting as well that people are just so fascinated with other people's private life. Like, it doesn't, like, if you're in the spotlight at all, everyone's trying to find out, about your family and about your wife and about your, husband and whoever. And it's just so fascinating that people, you know, can't just be with the person that's in front of them. They want more. They want it all. They want to know everything. It's just, I find that really
Yeah.
fascinating.
And it's funny. Sometimes we're different at home than we are out in the public spotlight. So some people share a different version of themselves when the lights are on and the camera's on than who they are behind the scenes. You don't really know who they are. All we know is what we see in the public eye, but we don't necessarily know who they are when the lights turn off and they're home by themselves.
100%. Yeah. It's really interesting. I heard Gary Vee say, I'm the most public private person you'll ever meet. And I was like, oh my gosh, you are. You are the most public private person, because no one knows. I don't know anything about his family. And I've never looked into it, because he makes a point to keep his family life private. And I'm like, okay, if you want your family to be private, then to me, they're private. I'm going to respect those wishes. But it's just really fascinating. There's like no press about them. I've never
Yeah.
seen them
Yeah.
at all.
If you were to watch me on stage at a conference, you will know everything about my children, my spouse, my pets. Like, I'm like, so I came home the other day and here's what my wife
Yeah.
said. She's an owl. I'm a
Right.
parrot. I'm like,
Yeah.
as a parrot eagle, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Tell you whatever you want to know.
Yeah. Yeah. I try not to, but then I'm like, dang it just keeps coming out.
No, I try
All
to.
right.
I don't.
Yeah, me too. All right, so just got a few more questions before we wrap up. I feel like this could go forever because there's so many great questions. But let's move on to parenting. How can you identify your child's personality to better parent them? And also, I don't know if this is possible, but can we encourage our children to develop personality traits that will serve them in the
So
future?
first, let's talk about, how do you understand their style? I mean, it's really the same
Mm-hmm.
thing as what we just did with an adult. If you have a child who asks 1,000 questions, usually why are we doing this? Why is it this way? They're probably an owl. If you have a child
Mm-hmm.
that's very sensitive, they may have cried more when they were younger. They may have been actually very fussy as a baby. That tends to be more of the dove. If you have a child that just smiles a lot, it's all good. Whatever happens, it just works out. That's probably a parrot. If you have a child who thinks they're in charge of you, despite the fact that they're the child and you're the parent, they are probably an eagle. And the challenge that we have is that we try to teach them traits that we think will serve them because those traits served us. In other words,
Right.
an eagle parent who's trying to say to a dove, you need to be more assertive. You need to be more direct. You need to tell people what you want in life, or you're going to get walked on. You know what the underlying message there is? I don't really value who you are as a person right now, but if you acted more like me, then I would love you, because who you are is not okay. And parents would say, oh, no,
Right.
no, they're fine. I'm just trying to help them. Yes, but the underlying message you're conveying is who you are right now isn't okay. But if you act more like me, then you will be okay. And what we really need to do is accept that our children can be very different from us. And yet we need to help them to be successful based on who they are. If you're a
Mm-hmm.
parrot, I'm a parrot and I'm like, you know, building strong relationships, getting out there, talking to people, being energetic, that's going to drive your career. And yet I have one son who's an engineer. That is not going to drive his career. I needed to honor the fact that he's going to be more reserved. He's going to take things apart and dissect things and analyze things. And that feeds his soul. And if I say to him, look, you got to dial up your energy and enthusiasm and your passion, that's not gonna work for him. And so if I did
Mm-hmm.
that, I would be really saying to him, you need to act more like me. And so
Right.
figuring out their style isn't the hard part. Figuring out how to treat them based on what their needs are, that's what takes energy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's a really, really great point. Yeah, it's really interesting how difficult it is for some people to just live and let live and be okay with the fact that, especially your children, most likely are not going to be like you. They're going to pick up
They are
the
not.
things that.
They
Yeah,
by
yeah.
default, they kind of are gonna not be like you because they're gonna want to try to forge their own path. And you
Mm-hmm,
have to just be okay with that. And you have to
mm-hmm.
allow them to be their own person. And it's my wife is an owl. She's a psychologist, has master's degree. My parrot child is a skateboarder. That's what he does. He skateboards, right? He goes out and he travels around, and he was just on a cover of a skateboarding magazine. He is a skateboarder. Well, how do you think that flies with an owl who's very education oriented, has a master's degree, and he's like, you just travel around, you show up at a skate park, you just have fun, you'll turn it into a career. It's a great thing. He somehow makes it work and he loves it, but you have to allow him to be who he is, because you're not going to turn him into somebody who he's not. And if you try to, then it's really saying that message that in a sense that you don't think they're okay the way they are. So this is a hard one for parents to really accept our kids for who they are.
Yeah. That's your own journey, not their journey. Really interesting. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to ask you before we wrap up, like, if there's anything else that you can share with us to help us unlock and kind of be the best versions of ourselves.
I think just the underlying theme is I think the most important theme is don't impose your personality on the people around you. Think about who you're talking to and treat them the way they want to be treated. That is the fundamental key, is if you put energy into treating people the way they needed to be treated and not imposing your personality on them, that's how you build strong relationships.
And Merrick, would you recommend, if you don't know, let's say you're having a hard time kind of reading that, just asking them?
Absolutely. I say that all the time to people in companies. I say, look, you're a manager, you're providing information to one of your staff members, and you can say to them, was that too much information? Was that not enough information? How did that work for you? Was that too direct? Should I soften that a little bit? I mean, you can ask them questions and kind of gauge, how did that just work? But you can also tell by the reaction. If I'm a parrot and I'm communicating to an owl and I thought I just gave them a lot of information, but now they have 1,000 questions, you probably didn't give them enough information. All right, next time I need to give them more. Got it. So just see their reaction, see how they're responding to you. What are their facial expressions? What are the questions they ask you? But it's perfectly fine to just ask them, how'd that work? If I were going to share that type of information with you again next time, what should I do differently? What did you like? What didn't you like? Happy couples know how to communicate to each other. They talk about how they communicate with each other. And then guess what happens? They communicate well with each other. Otherwise, you just have to muddle through and figure it out.
Merrick, thank you so much. This has been so enlightening. I feel like I'm going to be thinking of everyone as birds.
Excellent. My work here is through.
Merrick, if people want to find out more about you and get in touch, how can they do that?
If you want to, first of all, if you want to read about the styles, check out the Chameleon. It's wherever online books are sold. You can listen to it too. So it's actually got an audio book, which is a lot of fun on Audible or iTunes. Or you can go to takeflightlearning.com. So takeflightlearning.com, and you can learn all about the training programs that we offer. And there's a store there. You can actually take the assessment and take the profile, see which bird are you, what is your style. So a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you. And for anyone listening, you can find all the links mentioned in this episode at rebellove.com/EP36. Merrick, thank you so much for being here. It has been an absolute pleasure. I am definitely going to read your Chameleon book, and I'm really excited to do that. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Rebel Love Podcast, the podcast about love, sex, relationships, and money. If you like this episode, please support us by subscribing and leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. And find all the details of this episode and more at rebellove.com/podcast.